profound tactical understanding.
Park faced a gargantuan challenge. One single wrong decision, landing a squadron too early so they could be destroyed on the ground, or taking off too late to intercept, could have crippled fighter command and given Goering his easy victory. It required brinksmanship of the highest order.
If one looks at his performance during the Battle of Britain, it is remarkable in that even with hours to ponder decisions that he took within minutes about which fighters to deploy, in which numbers, where, it's very hard to improve on the decisions he made.
In preparation for Eagle Day, the Germans tried to disrupt the British fighter control system, especially its vulnerable radar towers. Squadrons of dive-bombing Stukas were given the job of destroying them. But once the smoke had cleared, it was plain little lasting damage had been done. In any case, there were many in the Luftwaffe who had no fear of radar, especially if it got the RAF up into the air ready to be shot down.
Before Eagle Day, our radar defences should have been obliterated, and I mean obliterated. They should have bombed every station 2 or 3 times over, put it right out of action. And if they'd done that, they'd have won the Battle of Britain.
As dawn broke on the morning of the 13th of August, Britain's air defences were in full working order, and they were to remain so all through the day. Instead of being the beginning of the end for the RAF, as Goering had hoped, Dowding's fighter command inflicted losses of 3-1. Not even the Germans now thought this would be over in a few days. Both sides readied themselves for a long, hard slog.
Every morning, Park would go down into the bunker, which constituted his command headquarters at Uxbridge. In this, there was a large map of southern and central England, which was in fact a plotting table on which raids that were coming in would be marked out by the WAFs down below. It was like a theatre. There's a raised dais, and Park would sit or stand with his senior controllers above this, so that he had a complete view of what was going on, and he had the so-called tote board in front of him showing what his own forces were doing. He would take the decisions about which raids to intercept with which forces.
They would have a list of how many squadrons were at readiness at various aerodromes.
We were on duty half an hour before dawn. The engines used to be warmed up, and we used to stick around, sometimes in our pyjamas.
We'd have to be there at 02:45, so that if there was a likelihood of us coming onto a readiness state by about 3 o'clock, we were in business.
All Fighter Command could do now was wait for the first raids to appear on the plotting table.
You would be told at, say, about 7 o'clock in the morning, the enemy is building up because they could see them. Breakfast time.
And halfway through breakfast, there'd be the tannoy would go off and say, 92 Squadron to readiness, and that was that.
Always breakfast time. You were lifting the first bit of egg and bacon to your lips, and scramble order would come.
We were perhaps at readiness, and suddenly the bells would ring and somebody would shout, Villa Squadron, take off immediately, Angels so-and-so.
When the bell goes, it's exhilarating, because you've got to hurtle off into your machine.
You raced out to your aircraft, climbed aboard, your parachute was in position, so you buckled that up as fast as you could, you pulled the straps over and pushed in the pin.
Start up and taxi out.
And then you get 12 Spitfires all sort of warming up, and you think, well, it's a bit ominous, someone's going to buy it this day.
As we were forming up, we'd get over the tannoy system. 603 Squadron, please get into the air as soon as possible.
Now the take-off. Throttle right forward. Stick central. Ease her off the ground. Back with the throttle to normal boost. And now up with the wheels.
Not every Spitfire on every airfield was at readiness all the time. They had to use them properly, like you'd use a tool. They couldn't just throw the lot in. The controllers and that had to be able to move these about like chess.
They would decide which squadrons were to take off first, which to keep in reserve, or to have any reserve, or to decide whether it was a German feint with fighters only.
On the ground, the controller would have known where we were and where we were going, where he thought we ought to go. I mean, these skilled chaps could tell us what to do, and with any luck, we were up there fast enough to get the height, and perhaps the sun as well.
We're getting the instructions to fly in a certain direction, to a certain height, to intercept the German formations.
The controller would have told him they were very good at this, what height to aim for and what direction to aim for, and how the enemy was approaching. They became very skilled at this. And I mean, it was very much a team job, wonderful.
However, once they had led the fighters to the German formations, there was nothing more that the controllers could do for pilots like Dave. It was now up to the squadron leaders to decide how to tackle the daunting odds they faced.
The first time I went into serious action was against 150 plus. That's a lot of aeroplanes. And they were coming in over Dungeness, and I saw them in the distance like a lot of gnats going around on a summer evening, you know, with 109s above. You know, when you saw that lot, you thought, well, where do we start on this lot?
It was quite overwhelming in that you weren't quite sure well, the best way to attack them.
Throughout August, all along the south coast, squadrons of Hurricanes and Spitfires threw themselves repeatedly against hundreds of German planes. Amazingly, they were holding their own. Dowding's system was doing all that was expected of it. Trainee pilot Dave Mallon is in his 4th hour of Spitfire training.
Okay, RAD 78, that's centralised, 60, 140 knots.
His cross-country sortie has brought him to an area of Kent known during the Battle of Britain as Hell's Corner, because of the ferocity of its air combat. If this was 1940, Dave would now be only 5 hours of training away from having to join the dogfights himself. The RAF was well supplied with planes during the battle. The real shortage was trained pilots. To help plug the gaps, Fighter Command took men from other branches of the services, including the Navy's flying section, the Fleet Air Arm. John Sykes was one such pilot.
Well, you'd get this scramble and you'd belt off into the sky, and we knew where we were going, and we'd get into a rough formation and head for Dover. It dawned on me at some time or another that on the way down there we were going over Dover, and that's where I went to school, and that was a good thing. Of course, in the back of a schoolboy's mind, you didn't know whether to drop a bomb on it or carry on and do your duty, but there you are. Anyway, there was a box barrage on, and some bloody gunner hit me with a shell. Well, it didn't hit me, actually. The thing went bang underneath and caused me to crash land.